This morning, I wanted to think a little bit about 1 Samuel 16. And when Israel had wanted a king initially, they were led to choose someone like Saul, someone who looked kingly. The scriptures say in other places that Saul was head and shoulders above the rest. He was tall, very stately looking. And, and we're beginning at this point Saul's downward trajectory. He's proving to be a king like the other nations, which is exactly what God said Israel's king would turn into. He warned them, like, be careful. There's going to be, if you have a king, he'll become a king like the other nations. And when rulers lose sight of who they are within God's kingdom, their main goal can be to hold on to power at all costs. And when you have a ruler whose only objective is to hold on to power, then it starts a downward trajectory no matter what. And this is where we're coming into Saul's life. He's already messed up. God's taken the kingdom from him and anointed somebody else. And here we see this contrast between King Saul and David, the young David, who's a boy out there tending his sheep. He's someone who doesn't appear very kingly. He was the last one to be chosen. He was out in the fields, and he gets called in and anointed. And apparently he's even a musician. He's very talented on the lyre. So he's got amazing patience when we think of David. He's already been anointed. He already knows what the end is by Samuel, but then he still places himself under Saul until the time that's appointed comes for David to be king. He's submitting to this limit that God places on him. And that limit is formative for how he's going to rule and how he understands authority later. God often, I think, places limits on us by our circumstances where we wonder when the things that God's promised are actually going to come to pass. When are they going to be the way that God tells me they're supposed to be? But remember from this passage that God doesn't look at the outward appearance as man sees, but he looks at the heart. God's main priority is heart transformation. And so what are the places in your life right now that feel limiting? Are we honest about what those are? And what would it take for us to embrace those places of limitation for the formation of our own hearts? Do we thank God for them? Or do we fight against them as though they're not actually limitations? So today I just want to encourage us to take a little time and reflect on those limitations that exist in our lives and thank God for them. Whether it's family or a job, the place that you live, whatever thing is holding you from saying, now I'm finally experiencing what God says I'm supposed to experience. Take time to reflect on what those are. Thank God for them. And realize that those places are where his presence is transforming our heart. So I want to encourage us to wait in those places of limitation this morning. Let's go ahead and take time to be silent before the Lord, and then we'll pray together the Benedictus.